Welcome back. I'm me, Vishal, and Tina, my colleague, we're still here with you. And this time around, we're going to talk about rural economy. Professor Abhinav Prakash is still joining us. We also have with us Professor Arvind Mohan from the Department of Economics, University of Lucknow. And let's try and understand. Let me begin with you, Professor Mohan. Let's first look at the key takeaways when we talk about the rural economy for this particular budget. Professor Mohan, you will have to unmute yourself, sir.
See, this budget focuses significantly on the rural sector, and particularly it is talking about, in the current financial, it is talking about the kind of support which has been extended to the rural sector, particularly the support to the Kharif crop and the Rabi crop, and the kind of increase that we have been noticing in last year and even in 2019-20. So there has been significant expenditure, and obviously, given the COVID kind of a crisis, government's focus was to sustain people in a backdrop of significant fall in income and employment. So that's what the government has done. And here again, that intervention is being continued because the anticipation is that the crisis is not running away in a hurry. At least this year, the kind of support which is required will continue. So I think to that much, I think the budget is very interesting. Atmanirbhar Bharat, the finance minister presented that over 27 lakh crore worth of expenditure was committed in the current financial. See, I would have also wanted to see that particularly almost 2 lakh crore worth of agri-produce is lost annually. It goes rotten because of lack of warehousing, logistics lines and cold chain. So I would have at least expected a reference from the finance minister, because this kind of a budget, you have very limited leeway as far as your expenditure from the government side is concerned. So I would have also wanted that maybe probably there may be more in the fine print. But as far as the speech is concerned, what I could see as of now, had there been a roadmap, it would have been, the impact of this budget would have been even wider. But nonetheless, I think it's a very interesting, good effort by the government, given the extraordinary difficult circumstances, the backdrop where we are starting from. I think it's a very good intervention, particularly on health and also on the rural sector.
बिल्कुल, सो गुड एफर्ट बता रहे हैं प्रोफेसर अरविंद मोहन। अभिनव प्रकाश जी, आपके पास आना चाहूंगी। जब सरकार बार बार कहती है कि हमारा मकसद है किसानों की आय को दोगुना करना 2022 तक, तो उस ओर क्या कुछ कदम दिखाई दिए आज के बजट में, जहां तक रूरल सेक्टर की बात करें तो?
Abhinav, you will have to unmute yourself.
एग्रीकल्चर मिनिस्ट्री के बजट को करीब 5% बढ़ाया गया है, और जो आपके एमएसपी हैं, इन्होंने इंश्योर किया है कि वो प्रोडक्शन कॉस्ट के 1.5 टाइम्स रहें। उसके कारण आपने देखा है कि प्रोक्योरमेंट में और जो है पेमेंट टू द फार्मर्स जो है उसको काफ़ी स्ट्रीमलाइन किया गया है। और एक जो बड़ी चीज़ इसमें सामने इन्होंने इसमें फोकस किया है, वो है एक जो इनकी स्वामित्व स्कीम थी कि आपके जो प्रॉपर्टी राइट्स हैं गाँव में, उनका एक प्रॉपर रिकॉर्ड हो। क्योंकि अभी तक प्रॉब्लम क्या थी भारत में कि प्रॉपर्टी डिस्प्यूट गांव में बहुत होते थे, तो आपके मैक्सिमम जो केसेस हैं अदालतों में, जुडिशरी में, वो प्रॉपर्टी डिस्प्यूट्स होते थे, वो मुझे चलते रहते। तो उसके कारण जो किसान होते थे, जो उनको काफ़ी नुकसान हो रहा था, क्योंकि अपनी ज़मीन को ना वो यूज़ कर पाते थे या उसमें डिस्प्यूट में फंसी रहती थी। तो स्वामित्व स्कीम पे जो है इन्होंने फोकस किया है। और उसके अलावा आप देखेंगे इसको जो है जो एग्रीकल्चरल क्रेडिट का जो टारगेट है वो करीब 16.5 लाख करोड़ इसमें रखा गया है। और वो बहुत बड़ी बात है, क्योंकि क्रेडिट फ्लो एक हमेशा समस्या रही है गांव में, खेती में। अधिकतर लोग जो है इसके कारण बैंकों से क्रेडिट नहीं मिल पाने के कारण हमेशा जो है साहूकारों के पास या मनी लेंडर्स के पास अभी भी जाते हैं। पंजाब में खासतौर पे समस्या रही है कि जो अड़हतियाज होते हैं वो मनी लेंडर की तरह भी एक्ट करते हैं, उनका काफ़ी कंट्रोल रहता है सरकारी मंडी पे। सो एग्रीकल्चरल क्रेडिट अगर लोगों को ईजिली एक्सेसिबल रहेगा तो उसके कारण भी जो है आपकी किसानों को ज़्यादा फ्रीडम रहेगी, उनकी ज़्यादा इनकम पर भी असर पड़ेगा। उसके अलावा आप देखिए इन्होंने एक पूरा फंड बनाया है जो गांव में आपके इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट को लेके करीब 40,000 करोड़ उसको जो है इस बार एलोकेट किया गया है। और मेरे ख्याल से वो काफ़ी बड़ी बात है, क्योंकि गांव में इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर स्पेंडिंग, क्योंकि देखिए इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बेहतर होगा गांव में तो अपने आप ही इनकम में भी असर पड़ता है। क्योंकि अगर फार्मर्स की इनकम की बात है तो वो आवश्यक नहीं है कि हमेशा सिर्फ उनकी खेती या उनकी फसल से ही आए, उसकी जो अलाइड एक्टिविटीज़ भी होती हैं उसके आसपास, उससे भी एक इफेक्ट आता है इनकम पे। तो उसको लेके फोकस करने की कोशिश की गई है। उसके अलावा इरिगेशन पे देखेंगे, माइक्रो इरिगेशन पे 10,000 करोड़ का इसमें एलोकेशन किया गया है। उसके अलावा इन्होंने और भी स्कीम्स हैं, जैसे आपका ई-नैम को और स्ट्रेंथन करने की स्कीम है, ऑपरेशन ग्रीन स्कीम की गई है कि जो आपकी 22 पेरिशेबल प्रोडक्ट्स हैं उनके भी वैल्यू एडिशन को किस तरह से इंक्रीज किया जाए। तो इस बजट में काफ़ी छोटी छोटी स्कीम पे फोकस किया गया है, लेकिन ओवरऑल जो इसकी जो थीम है वो ये है कि क्रेडिट फ्लो को ज़्यादा बढ़ाया जाए और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर क्रिएट किया जाए गांव में, ताकि पूरे गांव की इकोनॉमी को और खेती को जो है इसका फायदा मिल सके।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
Okay, definitely. The idea is to ensure credit flow there. Let me go back to Professor Arvind Mohan here. Professor Mohan, when we are talking about the allied, sectors as far as agriculture or rural economy is concerned, there seems to be a lot of focus there. As I can, go ahead and look at it, raising fish production as well by 200 lakh tons. Then the aim is to double milk production capacity by 2025. The NABARD refinancing scheme to be expanded further as well. So all these aspects, if we are looking at, looks like, the allied activities in the agri sector, which obviously are a key component of the rural economy, they also are the focus areas.
Yeah, I think you rightly mentioned that for some time, as a matter of fact, fisheries and animal husbandry have been major focus areas for the government. And this budget actually carries forward that idea. There are clear provisions for fisheries, how to promote fisheries across the country. And there are also equally relevant interventions as far as animal husbandry is concerned. So to that extent, I think we have enough evidence for some time that when you are even looking at employment generation, interestingly, there has been a shift towards non-agrarian employment in the rural sector. Almost close to around 6 out of 10 jobs are now coming from non-agrarian employment. So that certainly is an area where much of employment can be generated in the rural area. And that is where the focus is coming. So much of it can actually happen in animal husbandry. Much of it can happen in fisheries. And also, I think it's important to read the MSME idea along with this agrarian intervention.
Okay.
So there is significant focus on MSME. And I think to a very large extent that in the rural areas, I think is a major area of second generation reform. To some extent, this budget tries to address that also. So if these things begin to grow, gradually we'll find that the incomes in hands of rural people, farmers and others, I think that will rise significantly. And there is a strong need to generate employment in the rural area because informal sector has seen serious disruption for some time. And agriculture and allied activities in rural areas are not, the story is not that they are not impacted, they are as much impacted.
Okay.
So I think these, as you are, the different ideas which are coming from the budget, as they get woven together, I think lots of good can move forward.
एक और स्ट्राइकिंग फीचर विशाल जो जब हम एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर रूरल इकोनॉमी की बात करते हैं उस तहत ये रही है कि वन नेशन वन राशन कार्ड स्कीम को सरकार ने जो है ये इनेबल किया है कि माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स खास करके उस वर्ग के लिए काफ़ी बेनिफिशियल रहेगा कि वो जहां हैं वहीं से स्कीम का लाभ उठा सकते हैं। अभिनव प्रकाश जी, इस स्कीम से किस वर्ग को सबसे ज़्यादा, और अगर देखें माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स की बात करें तो हमने देखा लॉकडाउन के शुरुआती दिनों में उनको कई तरह की मुश्किलों का सामना करना पड़ा, उस एस्पेक्ट में अगर देखें तो ये कितना बेनिफिशियल रहेगा खास करके उस वर्ग के लिए?
जी देखिए, ये इसमें हम रिवाइज एस्टिमेट देखें जो बजट के साथ आया है कि पिछले फाइनेंशियल ईयर में किस तरीके से जो फूड सब्सिडी थी इस पर काफ़ी सरकार ने खर्च किया था और गांव में जो मनरेगा है इस पे काफ़ी एलोकेशन बढ़ाया गया था। रिवाइज एस्टिमेट में वो दिख रहा है। तो एक सरकार ने जो लास्ट ईयर किया था, एक बहुत बड़ा सेफ्टी नेट क्रिएट कर दिया था कि हमारे जो माइग्रेंट लेबरर्स जो शहरों से वापस जा रहे हैं उनको लेके जो है उनको एक मिनिमम बेसिक जो है सपोर्ट पहुंचाने की कोशिश की थी। लेकिन अब जो जैसे लॉकडाउन आपका खत्म हो गया है और जिस तरह से पैंडेमिक भी थोड़ा कम होता जा रहा है, तो जाहिर सी बात है कि माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स अब वापस लौटने लगे हैं। बड़े बड़े शहर में आप देखेंगे वापस से मजदूर वापस आने लगे हैं। लेकिन पहले जो समस्या होती थी कि आपकी जो आपने पैंडेमिक में देखा कि राशन पहुंचाने की समस्या होती थी, बहुत सारे मजदूरों को जो राज्य सरकारें थी वो राशन नहीं दे रही थी। खासतौर पर दिल्ली में बहुत समस्या थी कि आपका यहाँ पे राशन कार्ड नहीं है, आपका राशन कार्ड बिहार का है या मध्य प्रदेश का है। और जो तीसरी बात आ रही थी कि डेटाबेस हमारे पास नहीं था सरकार के पास। तो ये जो वन नेशन वन राशन कार्ड की जो परिकल्पना है, मेरे ख्याल से इन तीनों मुद्दों को वो एड्रेस करती है। अब आप कहीं भी रहेंगे भारत में, आपको जो है रेशन अवेलेबल हो सकता है। सरकार के पास एक डेटाबेस रहेगा कि हमारे लोग जो माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स हैं उसको ट्रैक करने का एक इनडायरेक्ट वे रहेगा कि किस शहरों में कितना कॉन्सेंट्रेशन है। और तीसरी बात है कि कोई भी राज्य सरकार अब डिस्क्रिमिनेट नहीं कर पाएगी कि आप जो है यहाँ के निवासी नहीं है, आप किसी दूसरे राज्य के निवासी हैं। ये हमने पैंडेमिक में बहुत ज़्यादा देखा था कि ऐसा हो रहा था। तो आपका जब इंटाइटलमेंट है जो पूरे देश में अगर मान्य होगा तो सबसे ज़्यादा फायदा जो आपका मजदूर वर्ग है। और गांव की अगर हम बात करें तो गांव में बहुत बड़ा तबका भूमिहीन किसानों का होता है या छोटे या मार्जिनल किसानों का होता है जो अपनी खेती की इनकम को अपने मजदूरी से या माइग्रेट करके इनकम को सप्लीमेंट करता है। तो उस वर्ग को बहुत बड़ा फायदा इसका होने वाला है। मेरे ख्याल से ये बहुत ही अच्छा स्टेप है माइग्रेंट लेबरर्स के पर्सपेक्टिव से देखा जाए तो। और इसके आने वाले समय में जैसे रोल आउट होना शुरू होगा, जैसे जैसे ज़्यादा राज्य सरकार इसको इम्प्लीमेंट करेंगी, इसके फायदे हम देख पाएंगे।
बिल्कुल, ना सिर्फ डेटा कलेक्ट करने में सरकार के लिए ये मददगार साबित होगा बल्कि उनके लिए कई तरह की स्कीम्स भी सरकार लागू कर सकेगी।
जी बिल्कुल, काफ़ी महत्वपूर्ण है वो एरिया भी। और एक और बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण बात है और इम्पॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट है। अभिनव, आप ही के पास आना चाहूँगा दोबारा। एक जीरो बजट फार्मिंग का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है उसको लेकर आपको लगता है कि बजट में एक बार फिर से उसको फोकस एरिया के तौर पर रखा गया और कुछ और थोड़ा सा और आगे बढ़ने की ज़रूरत है उसमें, क्योंकि वो बहुत महत्वपूर्ण हो जाता है जब हम किसानों की आय दुगनी करने की बात करते हैं और एज ए रिजल्ट हम रूरल इकोनॉमी को स्ट्रेंथन करने की बात करते हैं।
Yes, not much idea about the zero budget farming as such, but I think many people have also objected to it that it's not very scientific as you go forward with this idea. आपको जो करना होगा कि आपको जो आपकी प्रोडक्शन कॉस्ट है इसको आपको लो कर सकते हैं, लेकिन जीरो बजट फार्मिंग मेरे ख्याल से जो मेरा है कि बहुत ज़्यादा सक्सेसफुल जब से इम्प्लीमेंट हुआ है वो देखने को मिला नहीं है, क्योंकि उस अप्रोच में कई लोगों ने कमियां निकाली हैं। बट अगेन not much idea about how the agriculture is done actually, so
okay.
Can't comment on that.
Okay, Professor Mohan, your views there on the concept of zero budget farming and how it can help further?
You asking me?
Yes.
See, I think in some locations it has seen some success across the country, but I think it is still in a nascent stage, and gradually, as Abhinav has rightly said, I think we have to give some time to understand that how much replication is required, because in rural areas there can be many other ideas which can actually be taken forward. Most importantly, I think connect with the market is extremely important. Two things are very important. One is the idea of MSP to ensure that a social safety net remains for the farmers. Second, that the APMC Act, we are kind of maybe diluting the APMC Act and bringing the market into picture. So the idea is not to completely abolish the APMC segment. So I think this budget tries to address from three corners.
Okay.
Already there were three bills which are major reform interventions as far as agriculture is concerned. And there the issue of MSP has been coming up time and again. But it needs to be understood what the finance minister focuses in this budget. We have seen that significant rise has been there as far as MSP for, say, paddy is concerned. Very significant rise from 13-14 levels. Similar rise we have seen in Kharif. Okay. But more importantly, if you go by the statistics which is available, 2007 report of Government of India suggests that over a period of time, demand for paddy and wheat has gone down. And this is not in absolute sense, in relative sense. Because incomes in the nation has grown significantly over a period of time, and as income rises, we start purchasing those things which were not affordable to us. For example, fruits, vegetables, milk, etc. Now, what we have seen now is there has been significant rise in MSP of other commodities. For example, cotton.
Okay.
Till 2014, cotton attracted only around 93-94 crore. Just 93 or 94 crore worth of MSP support was provided.
Okay.
This year, it has gone up to 25,000 crore. So look at the transition. And it's very important to focus on commodities other than paddy and rice. Because if we are really wanting that farmers have to become maybe more self-reliant and their livelihoods are to be improved, then you have to look at many other crops other than paddy and wheat. So I think That kind of shift is being observed here.
Okay,
So that is
okay.
on the MSP front.
Professor Mohan, I'll come back to you, and please stay with us. I'll come back to Professor Abhinav as well. But we're also joined by Mr. Amitabh Kant, the CEO of Niti Aayog. Welcome to Rajya Sabha Television, Mr. Kant. And let me start by looking at the key focus areas when we're talking about this budget. Obviously, health is one, infrastructure is another. But how do you interpret this particular budget?
My personal view is that it's a very forward-looking and a progressive budget. It does not look at merely revitalizing India's economy from the pre-COVID stage, but taking India on a sustained growth path over the next 3-4 years. So it sets a clear direction that India has to get back into a high trajectory growth rate. And that's why this immense focus on infrastructure and immense focus on asset monetization, which is very, very critical to raise resources, and also this clear continuation of the policy of disinvestment. And my personal view is that government is good at doing certain things. For instance, it has created infrastructure, but it's not that efficient in operation and maintenance, and therefore whether it's gas grids, whether it's pipelines, whether it's warehouses or stadiums or roads, where revenue streams have already started coming in,
Okay.
they'll be much better and more efficiently managed by the private sector through InvITs and REITs, and that will enable a lot of resources to come back for creation of fresh infrastructure. Second, I think the key challenge for the Indian economy was about providing greater credit to the Indian economy, and what this particular budget does is recapitalizes the banks, as well as talks about a new reconstruction and asset company, which will enable all the non-performing assets to be put at one place, but enable us really to make banks push for greater lending. And the signal that 2 banks will be privatized, 1 insurance company will be privatized, will push the banks to perform better and compete with the private sector banks and the private sector insurance companies.
Okay.
And that message was called for. And this, to my mind, I would rate this budget very, very high in taking India towards a high trajectory growth rate.
Okay.
Okay.
So with the kind of announcements, Mr. Khan, that have been made in the budget by the finance minister, with a special thrust on infrastructure and the healthcare sector coming after the COVID-19 pandemic, do you think it's going to, accelerate India's pre-COVID growth stage as well?
Yeah. Not mere. You see, even this year, if we get back to pre-COVID stage, because we've seen a decline in growth, close to about minus 7.7. So even if you have high growth rate this year, you will come back to the pre-COVID stage. But what the budget does is that it attempts to accelerate the growth to higher levels for the next 2-3 years. It sets that trend, and that is what will happen if we are able to focus on infrastructure, if we are able to focus on a vast range of disinvestment and asset monetization.
Yes, and I think the Niti Aayog perhaps in that aspect has a task cut out, Vishal, when it comes to preparing
Definitely.
a roadmap for this investment ahead.
Definitely, there is that aspect there, and that's why I'd like to bring Mr. Kant here, specifically on the disinvestment part where you spoke about earlier, Mr. Kant. That is really, really important, because obviously there is a lot of capital expenditure which is being talked about in the budget in several sectors, infra, health, and elsewhere as well. But that money also needs to come from somewhere. So if you're looking at the disinvestment policy, does this also signify the continuity as far as this particular policy is concerned? It's not about just this year, it was not about last year, but for the next few years as well.
Yeah. Actually, disinvestment has been going on for the last about 15 years in India. It started during Congress government, but it went on during Mr. Vajpayee's government and so on. So it's a continuation of the policy framework. What is now intended to be done is to, accelerate this and say that we'll continue with public sector only in 4 strategic areas. That is atomic energy, except, power, coal and mines, and financial and insurance sector. 4 sectors where we'll have not more than 3 to 4 public sector. But all other areas, we will privatize our public sectors, and that will bring in great amount of resources to the government to focus on education, health and nutrition, which is what is important. A government's job is to ensure that learning outcomes improve, health outcomes improve, nutrition improves, and it will also ensure that there is greater productive efficiency in the economy. Essentially, in the long run, India must become a very, very efficient economy in terms of productivity, and that is what this measure will do.
Okay. Well, manufacturing and MSME, these are the 2 sectors, Mr. Kant, which actually took the hardest hit during the COVID pandemic. So if we look at this budget and, the way several steps have been taken for these 2 sectors, if you could, give us the highlights, and also how will these steps help these sectors to, come back on its feet?
So the budget, has to be seen in consonance with the Atmanirbhar package. The 3 packages. It has to be seen in consonance with the fact that major structural reforms have been carried out across coal, mining, definition of MSME. A whole range of reforms have been carried out, and then the production-linked insurance scheme, production-linked incentive scheme across 13 sectors. So, which will make India a global manufacturing hub. So, across 13 areas, and the budget further pushes on that. And one of the main reasons, the MSMEs will, why you have a 6.8% fiscal deficit is because the aim of the government is that it's better to help MSMEs at this stage. Right now is the time to accelerate their growth and assist them and support them, because they should not become NPAs on a later date. So both these are very important measures. Greater flow of credit to MSMEs from financial institutions, and also ensuring that India benefits from the shift in global supply chains from the rest of the world to India. And actually, India's growth will take place only if we are able to drive manufacturing in a big way.
Okay, and what about rural economy, and specifically the agriculture sector, which has been the a bedrock of Indian economy? We have seen how it helped us during the pandemic period as well.
So, the budget has actually laid a lot of emphasis on the agriculture sector, the farmers, especially our farmers. There's a lot of emphasis on that. But in addition to the Agri-Infra Fund, which has been talked about, of increased outlay, there's a huge emphasis on animal husbandry. There's a huge emphasis on fisheries. There's a huge emphasis on diversified cropping and Nutricell. And, actually, the budget, agriculture and farming sectors are at the heart of this budget.
Okay. Also talking about the education sector, Mr. Kant, this particular budget was being seen as one that lays out a strong foundation for the new education policy that is to be rolled out very, very soon. In that aspect, how much of justice has been done through the allocation, the measures that have been announced? And
it's termed as reinvigorating human capital there.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think rightly so, the budget lays emphasis on education, it lays emphasis on health, it lays emphasis on nutrition, and this is all very critical because India's learning outcomes, health outcomes all have to improve, and they have, and that is unless and until the Human Development Index we don't register a major improvement, it will be very difficult to do sustained growth over a long period of 3 decades or more. So what the budget really pushes for is greater efficiency, greater improvements in health, learning outcomes, and a huge focus on nutrition. I think that's where the credit really grows.
Yes, and also
emphasis on education, health and nutrition.
Also on innovation and R&D, we see a significant allocation, a sum of 50,000 crore rupees for the next 6 years for the National Regional Foundation, which of course is going forward satisfactory. But taking on from what the economic survey talked about when it came to innovation, the survey suggested that, the private sector's role when it comes to innovation and trust on research and development has to be promoted. Going ahead, does the government plan to, get in the private sector more vigorously when it comes to innovation and promoting research and development, sir?
Yeah. You can't have innovation in a country, you can't have research without the private sector, and therefore the government has to be the facilitator, it has to be the catalyst, and that's why when you see these Atal Tinkering Labs, they are in both government and private schools. You have incubation centers across, startups from the private sector, all young entrepreneurs growing. We have over 55,000 startups. We are the second best ecosystem of startups in the world today. And this government is pushing for is really the dynamism of innovation and R&D to drive India's growth in the coming years.
Absolutely.
Okay, and two more aspects there before we let you go here. That is one, I'd like to bring you back on the health sector specifically, because that has been the highlight and that has been the focus area as well. 137% jump there, obviously a lot of money, but will it address those core areas where we were talking about linkages between primary, tertiary and secondary healthcare, and also, dealing with the regional imbalances when we talk about health infra?
So, health is essentially, we must understand, is a state subject. Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
yes, we can hear you, sir. You're still with us.
Can you hear?
Yes,
you hear
yes,
me?
Mr. Kant, we can hear you. You're still with us. Please continue, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so we must understand that health, education and nutrition are actually state subjects, and we have to continue to provide support to the states. But health, education and nutrition are very, very important. And that is why, in India, because of lack of tertiary care, 66 lakh people go below the poverty line because private tertiary care is very expensive. And therefore, the huge focus is being laid by this government on primary health and wellness centers, which integrates various disciplines. It's a holistic form of medicine, where at the primary level itself. So if we are able to improve primary health care, use digitization and connect the primary health centers with district hospitals and are able to take care of the common citizens at the grassroots level in rural areas, you will make a huge difference to the lives of the citizens of India. And that is what this government plans to do with this new Prime Minister Swasthya Yojana.
Okay. One more aspect here, and that is banking and insurance sector, Mr. Kant. There seems to be a lot of important decisions which have been announced in this particular budget vis-a-vis these two sectors. Recapitalizing few banks there. Also, as far as insurance sector is concerned, then the IPO, the LIC IPO, and even the finance minister was talking about that. Yes, this is going to happen this year. So and raising the FDI limit as well. Very, very significant there.
So all these are very progressive measures because, two banks being privatized, one insurance company being privatized. I mean, there's no reason why some insurance companies should be making losses in the public sector. So privatizing them will force other insurance companies to improve their performance. Privatizing two banks will ensure that banks compete with the private sector banks in India. LIC IPO will reap a lot of rewards for the government to be able to put for education and health and for infrastructure. And therefore, to my mind, all these are and also opening up FDI in the insurance sector and taking it up to 74% will be a very, very good move and will bring a lot of resources to this country and bring insurance to the vast number of Indians in this country.
Okay.
Okay, one final question, sir, before we let you go. And this is bringing you back to the disinvestment, because the announcement today has been huge. Because the Niti Aayog has been tasked with identifying the next list of central public enterprises that can be the possible disinvestment targets, sir. In that regard, by when can we expect a fresh list? And number two, is the target of 1.75 lakh crore rupees for this year, as far as disinvestment is concerned, do you believe it is achievable, looking at the pandemic situation that we've been through?
So first of all, let me say that the target of 1.75 lakhs is very, very doable, because investments, disinvestments across BPCL, Air India, BEML, Concor, they are all at very, very advanced stages, very, very advanced stages. And I think that should, they were impacted by COVID-19, but they are at very advanced stages. And secondly, let me tell you that we in Niti Aayog are both ready with asset monetization lists at a very advanced stage, and also with disinvestment lists. We'll do our homework quickly and move forward very, very fast.
Okay, there it is. Thank you so much, Mr. Amitabh Kant there, the CEO of Niti Aayog, talking about his perspective of the budget and also explaining several nuances there. Tina, let's take a short break here, but you don't go away, because when we come back, we're going to talk about the tax proposals, the indirect and direct tax proposals, quite an interesting aspect, and we'll explain all that in detail to you.
Something that impacts us directly. So don't go, we'll be right back.